Some people love to read. I'm not sure I'm one of those people, but I sure do like to write. Now, I'm going to be blurring most of these because this is my school account. Let's get started all the way back here. I was trying to write scary stories, like some sort of a mystery. So here we go. From Max. Where? 264 Gamer Street. When? 5 p.m. Saturday the 16th. What? Fun games for me turning 16. I'm not going to tell you the date, but I made this when I was like 10. Jam! Sorry. Jam immediately closed his letter. He slumped down on his bed. He couldn't go. His dad had just died, and he was so sad that he didn't want to go. Max did have the most legendary parties ever, so he said to himself, maybe I should go. Then he heard a knock at the door. Weird, he thought to himself. He didn't order anything. So he checked the door and found a pizza box. But when Jim opened the pizza box, he saw this. It's just pizza. So he threw it out. Oh, wait. No, there are like tomatoes on it. But on his way to the house, he saw something unusual. He didn't know if it was a dead fox or a sleeping fox, but he didn't want to take his chances, so he ran. And that's all. Let's get into an actual story. The Arcade Adventure. Oh my god. Okay, so I have the Arcade Adventure, and I have the Arcade. So this was made in 2018, and this other book was 2023. Okay. So this was like an October assignment. The Arcade Adventure. Spooky. One day, Max was going to the arcade. Out of all the places he had been in his life, the arcade was the best. Max has brown hair, but he got hairspray, and now his hair was blue. He also has blue eyes. You want to know what my fucking inspiration for this part is? It was TDM. Max is very nice to other people. That is in real life. In video games, he is super mean. If you tell him he has 2 minutes left, he will get really mad at you. So anyways, he was walking out of his mom's house and then past the donut store, and he saw it. It was so cool. It was made of bricks, and a neon sign was outside that said, open. He went right into the arcade happily. He walked to the cash register and asked for 100 quadrillion tokens. Jimmy said, if you have $200 billion, but Max only had $20. So he asked Jimmy, how many can I get with $20? Jimmy said, 30 tokens. But Max knew that wasn't enough for the game he wanted to play, but he thought it was okay. So he said, okay. So Jimmy gave him his tokens. Max started walking off when Jimmy said, don't go into the boarded up room. The game is out of order and there are reports that it's haunted. Max didn't care because he liked doing things he wasn't supposed to. Then he ran into his friend Carter. Carter is very, very, very nice. He had brown hair and blue eyes. Anyway, so Carter knew Max was going to get into trouble, so he asked, what are you doing? Are you going into the boarded off room? Max said, yes. And Carter said, dude, you know it's haunted. And Max said, there's no such thing as magic. And before Carter could stop him, he ran to the boarded room and started taking off the boards with a thing that magically appeared. And he got them off as fast as you could say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious 200 million times. Then he opened it and closed the door behind him so no one would see him go in. He looked and saw an old game called Super Scary Retro Bro Game. I made it up. Really? I couldn't tell. He turned on the game and it said, put in 30 tokens. Max knew the game was a ripoff, but he put the tokens in and it said, 1 player or 2. He clicked 1 with the joystick and the words on the screen turned red and said, I know who you are, Max. You are brave to come here, but brave people always game over. Don't expect much luck. I will see you soon. Max felt a blast of wind and the arcade game started to shake and sputter like mad. Then the words came back, but this time he heard them. Have a fun time in my game. You won't like it. I'll win you. Everything went black. Max woke up in a maze filled with pokey walls of thorns. He was silent and kept telling himself it was fake, so he thought, I'll just run into a wall and see what happens. So he got up and did it. He ran straight into the wall. It felt like he got stung by a million bees all over the front of him. Then he woke up on the bench again and looked over by the wall he ran into and saw it. It looked like a tall robot with wires all over him, like Twisted Springtrap in Five Nights at Freddy's. It had claws made out of arrows, and then it disappeared without doing anything to Max. So Max finally got up and looked around. There was arrows and swords like a battlefield with no one in it. I really had a way with words. He had to move on because he was hungry and scared. So he went into the maze. The maze had lots of turns and dead ends. Max was terrified. Once he got out, he would never get into trouble again. Just as he went across the 5th left turn he had taken, he saw it. He had never been so scared in his life. It came closer to Max, and Max fainted. By the time he got up, it was gone. It was almost like it was scared of something else in the maze, like a creature more scary than it. A creature so scary, it made it be scared. Max wished that one of his friends would help him out, and he blacked out. Then he woke up at the start of the maze, but this time he was with Carter. Max yelled happily, "Yay, my wish came true!" And Carter was scared so much it looked like he had just saw a beast gone wrong, like a giant weird face. Max... Max looked the way Carter was looking, and he saw a small green blob. Then it shot toward them and missed. Well, it missed Max and hit Carter. Then he started to turn green like a zombie. The game started talking. "Your friend is infected. You have to help him or he will game over. Then you will," it said for the second time. And they didn't know what the part meant, but they didn't care. All they cared about was one thing. Food. So they went into the maze and saw some boxes. Carter said, "Don't go there. We don't know if it's a trap for the hungry people." But Max didn't care, and he walked up, opened the box, and it wasn't a trap. They looked in the box, and there was so much food. Max picked up the box and started to run back to Carter. Then Carter saw it. It started running for Max, and Carter closed his eyes, and it stepped in front of Max and let out a scream, which made Carter's ears hurt from at least 50 feet away. Then it disappeared, revealing a trap that it stepped in. But Carter didn't understand why it helped them. Maybe it was lost in the maze world too. And the game talked again. It said, "Are you going to eat?" "Just kidding. You won't need to now." Then Carter immediately turned around, and Carter was right. All the food was gone. The game voice said they wouldn't eat, and the game was right. The game stole the food from them. Then there was silence for about 10 minutes. All of a sudden, Carter started to shake and yelled, "Ah!" And he zapped and started to disappear and reappear lots and lots of times. Then he got struck by lightning and disappeared. Max shouted sadly, "Carter!" So now it was only Max. Max didn't want to be without Carter, so he just started crying and ran deeper into the maze, hoping that he would find Carter. 2 hours later, Max was still running, looking for his friend. He didn't have much luck. Then he stopped to rest, and as soon as he stopped crying, a portal opened, and Max realized this was his only way out. But he didn't want to leave his friend, trapped, sad, and hungry in this other dimension. He almost barfed at the thought of it. But Max decided this was the only way he could escape, and so he stepped through the portal. He woke up in a dumpster outside of the arcade. It was dark, so he opened the dumpster. It was still dark, so he figured that it was night. He stood up, scanning the outside, trying not to smell the stinky garbage. He realized that he was at his mom's house, so he went inside and went to bed. Then he woke up in the morning to go to the arcade to save his friend, but it was closed, and it had been struck by lightning. The end. I think we're ready for a better story. Oh, god damn it, of course why did I always make like 10 copies of these stories? I'm honestly kind of proud of this title. I don't know. Is this a title of something already? The only thing I'm seeing is an Avengers fanfic. Holy shit. This book is for ages 11 plus. I think you can tell when I made it. Walter woke up scared, afraid, and frightened. He had the worst nightmare ever. He was glad it was just a dream, although he wished he didn't wake up. He started to see creatures, their shadows walking across the wall like there was a huge party waiting to meet him. He lay in bed, sweating. All of his fears came to him at that moment, like when you fill a hole with cement, the hole being your brain and the cement being all your fears in life. He watched as the shadows got closer, creeping along the ripped up wall like someone on a spy mission. He watched as the shadows got closer and closer. He shut his eyes as he felt his covers being pulled off him and his temperature started to drop. When he opened his eyes, it was morning, even though he shut them for just a minute. The old grandfather clock was ticking very loudly, and for a second, just a second, it stopped. Dead silence. He woke everyone as he got up off his bed. Wait, this book is missing some shit. One of the documents is just called "This is the Wrong One." He woke everyone as he got up off his bed. His foot felt like it was getting impaled by a spear. He fell over with a loud thunk. You see, Walter lived in a place called Clovertown Orphanage. As you can tell, Walter is an orphan. The Clovertown Orphanage is a century-old orphanage built on a very dry and rough land which is bad for farming, so their food is shipped 2,000 miles from Swampy Swamp, which is a bad place, and so they only get a weird plant that supposedly grows by a shed or something. Nobody really knows. And what they drink is water from an old, mossy well that is more than 80 years old. So the kids were in very poor health. A kid named Arthur asked Walter, "What happened?" And Walter replied, "I just stepped on a nail," but it wasn't a nail. Shh, he'll find out soon. He didn't understand why it hurt him so much that he screamed. He never screamed. One time he tripped and landed face first into the side of his old rusty bunk bed. He didn't even have a scratch. He looked under his bed and found an old crumpled up piece of paper. He put it in the pocket of his ripped shirt. He put it at the bottom of his mind. After all, he was starving from all the commotion. He walked over to the huge wooden table with its stained, rotting surface and its old, squeaking chairs. When he got to the table, the food was being served by their old and slow conveyor belt. As soon as the fights over the crumbs of bread were over, everyone began eating. As he wrapped his dark green seaweed-looking food around his fork, some little flakes of it fell onto the flake-covered table. When he put it in his mouth, he swallowed as slow as he could. When when he when he put it in his mouth, savoring every taste of it, even though it was salty enough, he couldn't stop himself from dumping a handful of salt on it. He wanted more salt, but the chefs told him that he'd had enough and that they couldn't wait for him to get a heart attack. They laughed after they said it the first time and were obviously joking. But after a few hundred times of saying this, Walter feared they actually meant it. After the plant dissolved in his mouth, it was free time. He went up. Is this like a prison? What the hell? He went upstairs and squeezed under his bed. He opened up the secret cupboard and felt in his pocket for the paper he had put in earlier. He felt the now covered in salt piece of paper. He pulled it out and felt it. It felt now like a piece of soft cloth instead of paper. He put it in the cupboard and closed the door, just managing to squeeze out from under his bed before the other kids arrived. He knew the exact time the kids would arrive because he had spent most of his boring life there. Jesus Christ. I'm making fun of this kid. He watched one curly-haired kid eat some cheese that he'd probably stolen from the kitchen. He didn't get the kid in trouble because he once stole food from the kitchen too. The best time to do it was morning free time when the kitchen was left unattended. They had all sorts of things that were impossible to get, like hard-boiled eggs, apples, more salt, spaghetti, slices of bread, cheese, and sometimes, rarely, cookies. He watched the poor boy devour the cheese like a lion eats a deer. Jesus. He stopped raiding the kitchen after he was almost caught by a chef who was eating a frosted donut from downtown. He had heard of donuts but never had one. Sometimes he imagined biting into a jelly filled. He imagined the soft warm dough and the jelly squirting into his mouth, strawberry flavored. Anyways, he was too afraid of almost being caught again, or being caught. Luckily, he jumped behind a crate just in time, and the chef thought it was a rat in the vent or something. He shook his head to snap out of the flashback. As soon as he came to his senses, the boy had finished eating the nearly 3-pound block. He looked at the other kids and realized they were packed. He shoved his gear into his backpack and then hurried to catch up to the group. Chapter 2, The Piece of Paper. As soon as they got to the lake, they took turns going behind a big bush and changing into their swim gear. Walter was really good at swimming because he normally spent most of his free time swimming. Now it was time for the Olympics. That's what the cool kids call it. First up, Mark Burpbottom and Josh Carpetman were doing a competition, a diving competition. The rules are simple. Whoever touched the bottom of the lake first won. Of course Josh won. Josh was almost as good of a swimmer as Walter. Then, when they got back, they had lunch. More of that plant with more salt. Walter was excited for afternoon free time because he had 2 hours to do whatever he wanted. When everyone ran to their new TV to look at the small screen, Walter crawled under his bed. He opened the cupboard. It was probably just him, but when he touched the soft paper, he saw the image of a huge island in the middle of an ocean with a window carved in it. It was probably just him. Something was familiar about this island, yet he couldn't recall seeing anything like it. The next thing he saw was the piece of paper in his hands. He uncrumpled it and read it to himself. It said this: Name, Walker Opal. Gender, female. Gender? Okay. Family members alive, 0. Age, 25. Rank 1 to 10, 8. I love they just tell you the range so you can know how like low you are on the chain of command. ID, whatever. Job, working in the lab. Alive, no. Address, and then reason for death, and it seems to be blank. He just sat there and thought, who is Opal Walker? Why was this under my bed? He didn't know who Opal Walker was, or, in this case, since she worked in a lab, Dr. Walker. I don't think that makes you a doctor. Guys, if I become a janitor and work in a lab, does that make me a doctor? He was speechless. He was interrupted by the loudspeakers. They said, "Get your food or we'll put mustard on it!" Mustard was gross! He ran down the hallway and slid down the rail of the staircase, mostly because of the fact that the stairs were cracking. Then, he sat down in his seat, dumped a handful of salt on his plate, and shoved a bunch of salt that he'd spilled into his mouth. After dinner, he ran into the boy who'd been shoving that stolen cheese in his mouth. "Hi," they both said at the same time. The boy asked, "What's your name?" "Walter."
Walter. Put your away, Walter.
Walter replied, wondering the same thing. "What's yours?" asked Walter. "Peter." "Peter, the horse is here." I'm sorry. Peter said happily. "Nobody asks me what my name is," said Peter. "So why did you?" Walter thought and thought and thought. Finally, he decided what to say. "Because I was wondering if somebody could help me with something. I was looking for somebody I could trust." He looked confused, then said, "But how can you trust me if we just met?" Walter replied, "It's a gift. I know who to trust and who not to." They walked back to the room and got into their beds. They fell asleep quickly, and when they woke up, only they could feel that something was not right. Chapter 3, Adoption. I think I watched, Meet the Robinsons or something, and I was like, okay, this is what an orphanage is. They got up and changed into their clothes. When they went to breakfast, they both said, "Something doesn't feel right." You know how some mornings you wake up and feel like today is going to be a completely ordinary day? And how some mornings you feel like your life is going to completely change? No? Well, this is how they felt. They ate breakfast slowly so they could talk for most of the time. After breakfast, they crawled under Walter's bed and examined the note. Almost 1 second after Walter showed Peter the note, he blurted out, "I know who Opal Walker is!" Walter looked at him. He stared for a second, then realized he was opening his mouth and shut it. Walter asked Peter, "Who is she?" Peter responded with a sigh. "She was a scientist. One of those ancient ones that you've probably heard of." "Oh, you mean in the Book of Legends and Myths?" Walter questioned. "Yeah, but this one is the one the book says went crazy over something she made," Peter replied very seriously. "Let's go to the library this afternoon," said Walter, obviously excited for the adventure ahead. The library was small, but had about 200 books, almost 20 checked out. So the book they were looking for about legends and myths could literally be anywhere. Even in their dinner. One of the chefs accidentally put a book about dirt into Simon's food. Later, Walter and Peter went to the library. "So," Walter said, "where should we start looking?" They then started to realize it was going to be a lot harder than just looking for a book and finding it. They needed a plan, and to have a plan, they needed time. And there was the possibility that they would get adopted in that time. Shoot, I want to keep living in an old broken down orphanage to uncover a mystery. They then decided that Walter would look in the old dust book section, and Peter would look in the bad condition book section. They didn't find the book. But this was only the first afternoon of looking. They hadn't even looked for 3 hours, and they had already seen a third of all the books. The next day, one kid would be chosen to get adopted. What? I'm sorry, are they choosing at random to adopt a kid from here? Do you just get to, spin a wheel? What is going on? So on their way to dinner, they pulled up all the couch cushions, but only found a book about spiders. They went to dinner not happy about what they found. As they were eating, 2 kids named Jerry and Steve were talking about who they thought was going to get adopted. Steve was a kid with old glasses, and Jerry looks just like Walter. Anyway, here's what they said. "Hey, Steve!" "What?" "Dude, I know who's getting adopted!" "Pfft, no way." "Yes way." "How do you supposedly know?" "What do you mean?" "Dude, what's your proof?" "I heard it." "That's fake if you heard it." "No, it's not." What is my voice? Then fists started flying. Walter ducked just in time because as he ducked, a broken piece of plastic came flying over his head. Everyone in the orphanage watched as Jerry grabbed Peter and used him as a human shield. Walter was also grabbed, but by Steve. They both got punched in the face at least 10 times and had to get sent to the nurse. They both had to keep their jaws in slings because they couldn't move their jaws. The nurse is really nice. Before she sent Peter and Walter off to bed, she gave them cookies for when they feel better. "Hide them well," she said. "You know what they'll do if they find those." What? I'm writing about a prison! Peter and Walter walked off to bed, not knowing what would come the next morning. The moment Walter woke up, he was filled with joy. Adoption Day! Later, at breakfast, Peter looked sad. Walter thought he was thinking about Adoption Day, so he said this. "Why are you so sad, dude?" Did you realize there's no chance of us getting adopted with these things on our heads? Peter shook his head. I know already. Chapter 4, the lights go out. Walter was confused. Peter should be happy. They could finally figure out what the heck was going on. Are you okay? Walter asked. He was starting to worry. Peter didn't reply. Then the lights went out. All the kids except Peter and Walter screamed. Then they heard footsteps. At this time, all of the adults were in the one room where the lights didn't turn off. What? They're not supervising the children. Then they heard a muffled scream. It was Steve. About 30 seconds later, the lights turned on. Steve was gone, and there were claw marks on the walls. Walter followed the claw marks and found Steve's glasses in a pile of salt. He looked closer at the wall and found that the claw marks formed words. He didn't have time to read them because the lights went back out. When they turned back on, the claw marks were gone, as were Steve's glasses and the salt. He went back to his cupboard and pulled out the piece of cloth. He looked at it and realized some of the words had changed. This is what it said. Name, Walker Opal. Gender, female. Family members alive. 0. Age since 3 BC. 25. Rank 8. Job working in the lab. Alive. Yes. His heart started beating. It started? Jesus Christ. I guess he's been like a corpse this whole time. She's alive? He was so confused. He immediately ran for Peter to tell him. Peter, 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 he yelled as he ran towards Peter, who was currently watching TV. Yeah, dude? Peter replied. Peter, it says Opal Walker is alive. We need to get to the library now, Peter replied, and the two boys ran to the library. Chapter 5, she's coming. As they ran, Walter tripped over something. It was the book they wanted. Why did I say that with like so much enthusiasm? Right as Walter was about to open the book, Peter said, I don't think you should open that. Why not? Walter replied. You can open it if you want, but I've got a weird feeling, Peter said. Walter opened the book and flipped to the Ancient Scientists page. It said this, Ancient Scientists. There were many ancient scientists, but the most famous one that disappeared, name Opal Walker. There's not a lot of information, but that's all they read before the book shut. Walter had no idea how it shut, it just did. He reopened the page, and all the page was blank except for 2 words. They read, she's coming. It was written in blood. Fresh blood. Walter knew whose blood it was. Steve's. I have a feeling we're being watched, said Peter. You're being so dramatic, replied Walter. Just after Walter said those words, the book caught on fire and he dropped it. Smoke spilled into the air and shot straight for Peter. He dodged it, and the smoke hit the wall and disappeared. Right as Peter and Walter let their guard down, more smoke came out of the burning book and shot at the boys. Just as Peter was about to get hit by the smoke, they heard the sound of a fire extinguisher and the smoke and the fire was gone. They looked around to try and find who saved them, but nobody was there. Peter looked up, and the fire extinguisher fell on top of him. The book was still on fire, and Walter grabbed the fire extinguisher. Do you have any idea how to use this? Walter mumbled, his jaw still hurting badly. Peter stopped crying for a second, looked at Walter, and shrugged. We need to get out of here now, Walter said softly because his jaw hurt. What? Mumbled Peter. Run! Walter shouted as the fire from the book literally jumped from the book to the floor and started running after them. Walter and Peter ran out of the library and shut the door on the fire. Just as they thought they were safe, smoke started pouring out of the door. Fire! Shouted the youngest orphan, Bobby, who was 6 years old. Meanwhile, the staff were running to where Bobby was screaming. Why is that kid screaming? Asked one of the adults. I have no idea, said the other. Meanwhile, all the other orphans were so annoyed by Bobby screaming and went outside of their room to see why. At the same time, the adults had arrived. Why is this kid... Whoa, said one of the adults. Get outside, screamed another. That's all my book, by the way. That's all of the shadows that haunt you so far. Should I make a part 2? Both to this book and to the video? Yes, I should, but, whether or not you like this video will determine whether or not I make another video. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. You're being so dramatic. The most dramatic.